"Bennett, you're up." The words hit like cold steel in the thin Montana air. I looked up from my clipboard. Pen paused above a column marked "Signal check confirmed." Across the field, Master Sergeant Wallace was staring straight at me. Sunglasses glinting, boots planted like they belonged to the land itself. "I wasn't on the list, sir," I called out, voice even. "You are now." A few of the guys on the bleachers chuckled. I didn't look at them. The readiness gauntlet stretched out ahead. A winding sequence of obstacles, sensors, and timed markers, meant to simulate field withdrawal under duress, mostly for the younger techs to fumble their way through. I was here to observe. Log radio metrics. Not run it. Except Wallace had noticed me. He'd been noticing me for months. I stepped forward without hesitation, tucking my clipboard under one arm. Near the bleachers, Sergeant James Crawford sat in his old wheelchair, wool blanket over his knees, back straight as a rifle barrel. He came every month. Most thought of him as a ceremonial fixture, someone to nod at, someone who had earned his silence. Beside him stood a woman I hadn't seen before. Civilian clothes, mid-40s. Her left hand open toward me. In her palm lay a fabric patch, olive drab, edges worn soft. "This was your brother's," she said. I didn't blink. "He died in Ajurstani." "You were with him?" "I was leading comms," I said quietly. "He was covering the exit. I made it." "He didn't." Crawford's gaze didn't waver. The woman stepped forward. "He'd be proud," she said. "But now it's your turn. Let them find out who you really are." I took the patch. No words. Just nodded once. Slipped it into the breast pocket of my jacket, where the name tape read Bennett. Then I walked to the line. 8 months earlier. Camp Wainwright was iced over when I arrived. Chain-link perimeter, rusted Quonset huts, snow-capped ridges in the distance. They assigned me a cot in the technician barracks, gave me a tag with a reactivation number and a duffel of mismatched gear. I didn't complain. I was 40, average height, quiet, no rank insignia, no ribbons, just reactivated under a Joint Services Commission for field communications work. Every morning I ran alone. 5 miles, different route each time. No one noticed. No one asked. They saw what they wanted, the quiet radio lady, good with cables, efficient, unremarkable. That's what they needed me to be. But 15 years earlier, I had stood on the sand in Diego Garcia. Bud/S Class 257. 172 started. 21 made it. I was the only woman. I don't remember most of it. Ocean drownproofing. Steel pier. Room inspections that felt like interrogations. By week 6, I was hallucinating Andrew's voice, my younger brother, who always believed I'd make it. By week 26, I had the Trident. Afghanistan came first. Then Ajurstani. Then Operation Sable Crossing. I didn't talk about those tours. Encrypted comms under fire. Jungle airfields. Improvised antennas at 2,000 meters elevation. My final mission ended with a broken signal and a shattered knee. Andrew was hit covering the exit. I pulled 2 men out. He didn't make it. They said my records were sealed. SEAL assignments buried under classified clearance. I didn't argue. I came home with a 60% disability rating and a leg that clicked in cold weather. The Navy wanted me to retire. I said no. At Camp Wainwright, I became a ghost in the system. They assigned me to communications maintenance under Master Sergeant Wallace. His domain was structure, schedules, drills, logs. He called me Tech Sergeant without inflection. He knew the title was a technical formality, not tied to any active unit. But he said it anyway. For months I worked quietly, repairing repeater nodes in freezing wind, recalibrating antenna arrays 2 miles up into the tree line. I cleared snow from satellite dishes with bare hands when the heaters failed. Most of them never saw me climb. Never heard the soft whistle I used to check for wind direction. Never noticed how I checked every route twice. But Wallace did. He started assigning me heavier loads. Midwinter ascents. Out-of-range posts. I never refused. "You move like you've seen more than cables," he said once, watching me dismantle a static generator that had shorted in the snow. He wasn't asking a question. I said nothing. The younger techs had theories. Some said I was ex-Air Force. Some thought I was married to a colonel. A few joked I'd been sent here because I broke something important. But none of them understood the silence. The silence you carry when you've watched someone die behind you. When you've left a brother in the dust and walked out with the sounds of a helicopter fading overhead. They didn't see the weight in my gait. Or the way I paused, always, before touching a radio dial. But one man did. Sergeant James Crawford came to the field tests every month. He never spoke much. Just watched from his wheelchair, blanket over his knees, eyes scanning every corner of the drill zone like it was still a battlefield. First time I noticed him, I'd just finished restoring a down tower north of base. Snow in my boots. My knee aching. I stopped near the bleachers to log the results. Crawford nodded at me. Just once. Next time he spoke. Your left knee, he said. Titanium core? I paused. Yes. He nodded again. Said no more. The following week, Wallace gave me a busted uplink 3 miles into the forest. Took me 6 hours in and out. When I returned, Crawford was there again. This time with a woman beside him. She carried something small in her hand, a patch, I thought. They didn't speak. Just watched. By now Wallace was circling. The unit's monthly readiness test approached. A standard obstacle course simulating evac conditions. Wallace ran it like a monarch ran a court. Selective. Ruthless. Usually reserved for the younger enlisted. The ones hoping for command tracks or officer recs. I wasn't on the list. Not officially. But Wallace saw me finish a manual calibration on an uplink node in record time. One hand unfastened a rusted relay that no one else could budge. That's when he said it. Bennett, you're up. The others laughed nervously. Some looked away. But I stepped forward. That's when Crawford rolled closer. And the woman beside him opened her hand. The patch. Olive green. Edges frayed. This was your brother's, she said. I didn't answer right away. He died in Ajurstani, I said, not looking at her. You were with him? I was leading comms. He was covering the exit. I made it. He didn't. Her voice softened. He'd be proud. But now it's your turn. Let them find out who you really are. I took the patch, held it in my palm. Then I walked to the line. The gauntlet was quiet. Cold. 6 stations. Rope wall. Weight drag. Code relay. Reactive targets. Climb and descend. Final sprint. The others watched, unsure if this was a joke or a setup. I started without hesitation. Up the rope in 3 pulls. Over the wall. The weight drag was next, 2 sandbags and a sled, meant to simulate a wounded casualty. I pulled it across 60 feet of gravel. Then the code relay. A simulation where candidates had to recall and transmit a 6-digit sequence while navigating through intermittent blind spots. Most people flubbed this. Timing was critical. I recited the sequence back perfectly, backwards and forwards. Wallace narrowed his eyes. Target field next. A fake engagement zone with reactive lights simulating hostiles and non-combatants. You had to hit the red, avoid the green within 10 seconds. I cleared it in 8. At the final station I ran. The sprint was short, maybe 200 meters, but the incline was sharp, the snow slick. My knee clicked with every step. But I didn't stop. At the line I stopped the clock. 2 minutes, 31 seconds. Wallace looked down at the board. The best time all month was 3:09. Second best, 3:24. Silence fell. Someone coughed. The wind picked up. Wallace stepped forward, his voice unreadable. Who trained you? I looked straight ahead. Communications division, sir. Crawford rolled his chair forward, raised a trembling hand. I don't know which one of you is the fastest, he said, voice rasped with age. But I do know which one of you is a real soldier. He pointed at me. She is. The silence cracked. A few clapped unsure. Then more. Not for show. Not because they understood. Because something had just shifted. And they didn't know what to do with it. I didn't bow. Didn't speak. Just nodded once. Then I walked off the field. And no one stopped me. That night I skipped the mess. I sat alone in the equipment bay, fixing a field antenna that no longer needed fixing. My hands needed to move. The silence needed to fill with something other than applause and eyes. I didn't need the attention. I hadn't earned anything new. I just did what I was trained to do. What my brother would have done if he'd made it home. I still carried his last message in my memory. It had come through garbled 5 seconds before the blast. Pull 2 get out. Then static. He knew what he was doing. He stayed in place so I could move. I did. But I hadn't moved on. The antenna whined softly as the calibration needle locked into place. I unplugged the tester and sat back, arms resting on my knees. My knee throbbed, but it was manageable. Outside, the wind rattled the metal walls. Inside, the patch he'd worn was still in my pocket. I hadn't taken it out since the course. I heard the door open behind me. Wallace stepped in, removed his gloves. "You didn't have to do that, run." I didn't answer. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You know, I checked the logbook. Your commission number. Couldn't find a service record that matches your physical profile or qualifications." "That's not unusual," I replied, still focused on the antenna. Many older records were archived offline. He watched me for a long time, then said, "You're not just a comms tech." I didn't say I was. He walked to the bench and picked up my calibration notes. "Scan the columns. You broke every marker today. That wasn't conditioning. That was doctrine. Coordination, restraint, rhythm. You ran that course like it was muscle memory." I looked up. "Is there a problem, Master Sergeant?" He paused, then for once softened. "No," he said quietly. "No problem. Just, some of us have ghosts. I think yours runs beside you." I didn't reply, and after a moment he left. 2 days later, a young Corporal Hines knocked on my door. I was rerouting an auxiliary cable along the southern tower when he found me. "Ma'am," he said, squinting into the light. "You got a sec?" I climbed down from the latticework, gloves tucked into my belt. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. It's just, I was updating some personnel folders, and something was misfiled under your comms certification." He held out a laminated certificate, slightly bent, an official seal at the bottom. It read, "Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, Bud/S Class 257, completion record, Trident awarded." He stared at me. "This yours?" I took the certificate, looked at it a long moment. "Yes," I said, "but it's classified. I didn't show it to anyone else." "Good." He hesitated. "What should I do with it?" "Give it to Lieutenant Colonel Devers, and say nothing more." He nodded and jogged off. That evening Devers summoned me. The CO's office was sparse. File cabinets, a map of the mountain grid, one worn photo of a previous battalion at attention. He stood behind the desk as I entered. In his hand, the certificate. "Sergeant Bennett," he said. "Is this accurate?" "Yes, sir." He studied me. "I won't ask what you did. I won't ask why this was buried. But I think the unit deserves to know you're not just here to fix radios." Silence. He added, "I've seen soldiers come through this mountain with chestfuls of medals and no spine. You've got neither, and more grit than anyone here." I didn't flinch. "You want me reassigned?" I asked. "No," he said. "I want the truth to shape this place. Quietly. With dignity." He handed the certificate back to me. I didn't take it. "Keep it," I said. "I don't need it anymore." The next morning, the unit gathered for a regular address. Usually Devers was brisk. Updates, assignments, dismissals. But this time he paused. "Some of you know Sergeant Rayleigh Bennett as a communications technician. That's not wrong. But it's incomplete." He looked across the rows. "She has a service history that is exceptional. I will not share details. You will not ask for them. But understand this. She is not a technician. She is a warrior. She has served this country in ways most of us will never understand. And we are privileged, yes privileged, to serve beside her." No applause. No cheers. Just a stunned, reverent quiet. It was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. When I returned to the equipment bay, something had changed. The clutter on my desk was gone. No random repair requests. No mislabeled forms. In their place sat a simple wooden frame. Inside it, the patch. Clean pressed. Mounted against a field gray background. Below it, A brass label etched with 6 words. He led you home. You lead now. I sat down slowly. My knee ached. My throat ached more. I didn't cry. That wasn't the point. But for the first time in 15 years I felt seen. Not exposed. Seen. And maybe in that stillness something in me stood up again. Recognition changed things. Quietly but fully. The morning after the unit address, 2 techs offered to carry my supply load to the northern relay station. I declined, but the offer stood genuine, not performative. Hines, the corporal who'd found the certificate, never spoke of it again. But from then on, he addressed me with a steadiness that said something more than rank. Respect unforced. Crawford was waiting the next time I passed the field. He rolled his chair forward, stopping me with a glance. They finally know, he said. I didn't respond. The snow was melting now, patches of gravel breaking through. The silence didn't need filling. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a single bar of metal, bronze, faintly scuffed. I kept this, he said, handing it to me. After they pulled your brother's body from Adjurstani, he still had this pinned on. I took it without a word. It was Andrew's rank bar. E4. Corporal. The metal warm from Crawford's hand, but still heavy with the cold that had never quite left me. You don't owe anyone anything, Crawford said. But I think you still carry debt. Invisible ones. Like most of us. He nodded toward the patch still mounted in my frame. Some of those debts are paid just by standing back up. I left without reply, the bar clutched in my palm. That afternoon Devers called me in again. He was seated this time, papers stacked neatly in front of him. No ceremony. You've got a choice, he said, straight to it. Command wants you on record. A technical instructor slot just opened at Coronado. Could be yours. Full transfer or joint rotation if you want to keep the mountain detail. I leaned against the frame of his door. What happens if I say no? He looked up. You stay here. No pressure. But I think you've got something to teach. Not just antennas. Not interested in classrooms. He nodded. Didn't think so. But if you ever change your mind, the offer will stand. As I turned to go, he added, for what it's worth, Bennett. I served with some of the best. And I've never seen anyone clear a simulation like you did. Not even in my active teams. That stopped me. I turned just slightly. It wasn't a simulation. I know, he said quietly. For you it never is. Spring came hard and early that year. Mud coated everything. Trees split their frost lines. Radio towers thawed and groaned as if waking up after too long. I took the long route one morning, running the edge of the southern ridgeline. 5 miles of incline and ice rot. My knee twinged with every step. Midway I paused. Below me the base shimmered faintly in the cold sunlight. Rooftop slick, antenna arrays glinting. And I thought of Andrew. I thought of the way he used to run beside me, back when we trained on the coastlines before his first deployment. Always pushing faster, always shouting behind me, "You're SEAL now, Rye. You gotta move." He died covering my escape. There was no citation, no press release, only the sound of bullets, and the last garbled syllables of a brother choosing the exit for you. I'd lived every day since under the weight of that choice. Not guilt, not even grief, just a quiet accounting. It never left. But here now something had shifted. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. It was space. And the smallest trace of peace. 2 weeks later, a new group of techs arrived. One of them, a lean young woman from Georgia, was assigned to my unit. First day, she dropped a signal coil during install. The others grumbled. She looked rattled. I knelt beside her, helped reset the brackets. "You're not here to be perfect," I said. "You're here to be steady. Steady keeps people alive." She nodded, then straightened. I didn't tell her about Diego Garcia, or Adjurstani, or Andrew, but I showed her how to tune a high-gain repeater to compensate for low-altitude interference. Sometimes service isn't about what you say. It's how you hold the silence. By midsummer, the patch on my desk had been joined by a second frame, this one sent by Crawford's daughter. It held a photo, faded, worn but clear enough to see. 2 figures crouched beside a makeshift radio unit in jungle terrain. One was Crawford, The other was me. I didn't remember the picture being taken, but it was real. My expression then was hard to read, jaw set, eyes narrowed under a brimmed cap. I was holding a broken antenna, fingers stained with ash. Behind me, smoke. I don't know where the mission had been. I only knew I'd survived it, and that someone had thought to preserve the moment. Not because of heroism, but because memory needs anchors. Because one day someone might need proof that you were there. That you didn't fold. That strength can look like stillness in the middle of a firestorm. Crawford passed quietly in his sleep 3 weeks after the summer readiness test. They buried him in the northern lot, beneath a sloping rise that caught the morning sun. Military honors. Flag folded. A handful of us stood in the chill wind, heads bare. I wore my original trident. Just once. No ceremony. Just pinned over my jacket above the heart. His daughter handed me the eulogy notes. Asked if I'd say a few words. I stepped up to the mic, looked at the field, the folded flags, the stiff uniforms, and said only this: some men fight loudly, some disappear. Crawford never stopped serving. He watched this place, this unit, every month, not because he missed war, but because he believed in what came after. He believed in memory. I paused, and he reminded us, every one of us, that strength isn't how you fight, it's how you stand. That was all. I stepped back, folded the notes, slid them into my jacket pocket, where the patch still lived, where the rank bar rested beside it, where my brother still ran just a half step behind. After Crawford's funeral, things slowed. Wainwright settled into a rhythm again. Maintenance logs, tower checks, late-night code updates. Most of the base returned to its routines, its silence. But something unseen had shifted. Not in them. In me. For years I had moved through life with edges tucked in. Crisp. Controlled. I answered questions with nods. Filled silence with action. And when memory rose, I buried it beneath new orders. Now the silence didn't need burying. It stood beside me. I visited Crawford's grave every Sunday at dawn. Just long enough to sit, knees stiff in the grass, and say nothing. Once I found someone else had left a folded field report on the headstone. No name. Just an old unit number written in fading ink. I left it there. Some stories didn't need retelling. Just witnessing. In late August, Wallace approached me during a systems check. "They're asking for you," he said, eyes on the relay tower. "Devers put your name in for the Regional Readiness Oversight Committee. They want someone who knows the terrain. Someone who doesn't flinch." I was kneeling beside a conduit junction, hands covered in grease. Committee work isn't my skill set. That's not what they said. They said you keep people alive. That you don't grandstand. You just get the work done. I stood, brushing grit from my palms. Who else is on it? Colonel Wexley. A few command types from other bases. One retired airborne, 2 current joint ops. I considered. Do they know my background? They know enough to listen. The committee met in an old armory on the edge of Helena, Montana. Tall ceilings. Sand-colored cinder block. Folding tables that rattled if you leaned too hard. The others introduced themselves by rank. I didn't. Just said, Rayleigh Bennett. Communications Infrastructure. Wainwright Sector. Some recognized the name. A few nodded with cautious respect. One, a major with silver in his temples, asked if I was the one who clocked the gauntlet in 231. I said nothing. The meeting opened with slide decks and metrics. Failure rates. Delayed response timelines. Staffing attrition. Halfway through, they discussed a satellite blackout in the high north. Communications went down during a storm evacuation drill. 23 minutes of silence. Critical minutes. They asked for analysis. I stepped up, moved the laser pointer aside, and mapped the terrain by memory. Identified the relay failure points. Offered a reroute plan using high elevation backups and short-wave burst triggers. Silence followed. Wexley looked at me. "You memorized those nodes?" "Yes." "How?" "Because once I had to pull 3 men out of a ravine under fire. The main relay was down. Shortwave saved us." No one asked which mission. No one needed to. That day they wrote my plan into protocol. Back at Wainwright, the shift deepened. I wasn't treated like rank. I was treated like ballast, something stable, unmoving, necessary. The new techs asked fewer stupid questions. The officers made fewer lazy assumptions. When I walked into a room, chatter dimmed. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. I hadn't earned a medal for understanding. I hadn't asked for one. But now the weight I carried had shape. Had witness. Late one night, Heinz found me in the comms shed, soldering a cracked transceiver board. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked, hands in his jacket pockets. "Every day." "Then why stay?" I paused, looked at the red wire in my hand, the curl of heat rising from the iron. "Because there are still too many people who don't understand what silence costs, and too many who break it for noise instead of purpose." He nodded slowly, then added, "They're planning something for Veterans Day. A unit gathering. Devers said you should speak." I didn't answer. Not because I wouldn't, but because I wasn't ready. Not yet. Veterans Day came cold and bright. The flag snapped sharp in the mountain wind. A platform was set near the parade grounds. Devers stood first, offering thanks, nodding to names. Then came Wallace, who spoke briefly about service and the weight of unseen labor. Then he called my name. I stood slowly. My left knee caught halfway up, clicking once before locking. I didn't speak from the platform. I walked past it, stood level with the others. "No speech," I said. "Just this." I reached into my jacket, pulled out Andrew's patch, held it up. My brother died covering an exit I was supposed to lead. He wore this. I carry it. I paused. "I won't tell you about honor or courage. I won't quote books or generals. I'll just say this. There are people among you right now who've bled and buried, who've come home in silence, who fixed radios when they should have been remembered." I looked at the new recruits. "And you don't need to know their full stories, but you do need to carry them forward. Because memory, that's the mission that never ends." Then I stepped back. No applause. Just the sound of wind moving across the grounds. The only sound that mattered. The weeks after Veterans Day felt different. Not softer, just clearer. No one treated me like a hero. That wasn't the point. But the ones who used to mock my quiet started leaving space for it. They saw now that silence wasn't emptiness, it was weight. The kind you carry without complaint. The kind you learn to respect. There were changes too in the small things. Crawford's bench was refinished. A plaque mounted beneath it. Sergeant James Crawford, U.S. Army. He watched so others could remember. No ceremony, just presence. At the next unit briefing, Heinz stood up and recommended a monthly memory drill. 10 minutes set aside for shared stories. No rank, no record, just the retelling of what stayed. Devers approved it. I didn't speak that first time, but I listened. And when a young private recounted losing his squad leader during a flash flood in Kandahar, I saw something shift in him, like a weight finally passed into open hands. That's what the stories were for. Not to glorify, to carry. Then came the audit. Every quarter, the regional command sent a small team to verify inventory, personnel efficiency, operational compliance. Usually it was a formality, but this time they flagged an inconsistency in my service record. A field inspector pulled me aside. "We found a sealed file cross-indexed under a legacy seal group. It has your BUD/S class, your Trident, and a redacted deployment log." "I know," I said. "It shouldn't be under a civilian tech reactivation, Sergeant." I met his gaze. "It's exactly where it needs to be." He paused. "They want to elevate you, possibly reopen the service record, give you formal rank restoration." "No." He blinked. "You're declining a full SEAL reinstatement?" "I'm not here for ribbons. I'm here because radios fail in storms. Because lives depend on cables most people forget exist." He studied me for a long time. Finally, he said, "If you ever change your mind." "I won't." He nodded. The matter was closed. On the first real snow of winter, I took my morning run early. 5 miles. Black sky above. Frost cracking underfoot. Halfway through the trail, I saw a figure ahead, standing still under a pine. It was Devers. Couldn't sleep. I asked, slowing. "Too quiet." We stood there a moment. Breath fogged the air. Trees creaked under the new weight of snow. "I put in for reassignment," he said. They're pulling me east. When? End of the month. You'll get a new CO. I nodded. Someone soft. He laughed. Not likely, but maybe someone who reads reports without skipping field logs. A pause. Then he reached into his coat, handed me an envelope. What's this? Something Hines gave me. Found it taped to your old certificate. He said it wasn't his, that someone left it before your name went on the memorial wall. I opened it. Inside a photograph. Grainy. Night shot. 3 silhouettes in a combat exfil zone. One of them mid-sprint carrying another. The third kneeling beside an open field radio. My posture. My hands. The ink on the back read Diego. Adjurstani. Memory is duty. No name. No date. I folded it once. Slid it into my jacket. Devers said nothing else. Just nodded. Then turned and walked back into the woods. When the new CO arrived, a woman lean, sharp-eyed, airborne, I introduced myself with the same line I always used. Rayleigh Bennett. Communications Maintenance, Wainwright Sector. She paused. Studied me a second longer than most. Good, she said. We need clarity. I nodded once. You didn't need medals to know when a leader understood silence. On New Year's Eve, the mountain base lit up its perimeter for a brief hour. Just a few floodlights over the training field. No fireworks. No noise. Most stayed in their bunks. A few stood under the light, faces tilted upward, remembering. I sat alone in the calm shack, a mug of black coffee at my side. On the desk the patch, the rank bar, the photo from Adjurstani, and the framed note from Crawford's daughter. I added one more thing that night. A folded slip of paper I'd carried since Diego Garcia. The final message Andrew sent before everything went quiet. Pull to. Get out. That message had haunted me for years. But now I saw it differently. He wasn't telling me to run. He was telling me to keep pulling. To keep bringing others out. Not just from fire. From silence. From forgetting. I still run every morning. 5 miles. Always a different route. Some days the knee locks. Some days it doesn't. But I run. Because memory isn't static. It moves. It shifts. It demands movement. And because out there, somewhere in the wind and wire, the voices of the ones who stayed behind still call. Not for recognition. Just to know someone is listening.